Well, everybody, welcome to the April meeting. I'm back in Columbus now for a few weeks. I'm at the museum. Got back Monday and got a chance to look around, and it's still here and still in pretty good shape after it's been over a year and a half since I've been here. Tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about the museum and then take you on a tour of our 1948 RCA remote van, which is a pretty interesting piece of equipment. Then we're going to have an open discussion. And there are no particular topics. A couple of people have suggested things, and I've told them to bring them up. Just so whatever topic you have, bring it up, and we'll talk about it. Like to invite you all to attend our swap meet and silent auction June 5th. This is really the first TV get-together since the pandemic started. It's going to be at the museum from 10 to 3, and we're going to have a silent auction of surplus museum stuff. And you can imagine in a year and a half, we have quite a pile of things. So far, we have about 70 items, all different vintages. And from past experience, I think it's a great place to get a real deal on a vintage set. And please consider becoming a museum member. I've mentioned this every week. We can always use more membership. And on the side panel of every page of our website, there is a support the museum link that lets you do that. Going back to the swap meet, on our homepage, there's a link that has information, more information on it. So go ahead and take a look at that. Before we get started, somebody suggested after our last meeting that we let new participants introduce themselves if they want. So is there anybody that this is their first time at this meeting that would like to talk about who they are?
I'm John Pursuit. I live in Oberlin, Ohio. And I was at the last swap meet we had, I think, where it was an open one where everyone could come and meet. That was several years ago. And so I'm delighted to be back with everybody again. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Welcome. Well, I guess that's the nobody else. So let me move my camera back to the van. Let me see how I turn this. There we go, that worked. This is the first time I've done this with my phone. I've always used a computer. So pardon the jiggles while I walk my way back. Say hi to Nipper.
Is this on your phone or is this a camera? This is really cool.
This is on my phone. Okay, here we are in our broadcast equipment room. It's sort of hard to get a good overall shot of the van. I'll put the camera up high. This is a 1948 RCA van. They sold it to, I don't know how many stations. I'm guessing around 50. Around the country. There's also at least one in Cuba that I know of. I don't know if I can zoom in on this, look at this picture, but here's its original configuration. Yeah. It was in Salt Lake City. Here's a picture of it with a camera and the microwave dish on the top of it. They got it in 1948 and then used it for several years. And in around 1960, they sold it to an educational station in Newark, Ohio, WGSF. And WGSF used it for a number of things. Here's a parade they covered. Here's a picture of their cameras on the top. They did football games, parades, county fairs, and things like that. We had several years ago, we had the I'll move this up front while I'm talking. Several years ago at one of our conventions, we had a group of people from WGSF on a panel. They were sitting right here in front of the van, and they told stories about using this. The first one was about driving it from Salt Lake City to Columbus. I think the top speed of this thing is about 50 miles an hour. It was an uncomfortable ride, they recalled. And when they operated it here, it doesn't have a generator. So their problem was finding power. And what they typically did, if they were parked in downtown Newark, they would park next to a laundromat and take the cable in and plug it in, unplug a dryer and plug it in there. And they had a whole bunch of places where they were able to do that around town. Now, this originally did not have air conditioning. And you can imagine in Salt Lake City in the summer what that was like with all the tubes in this thing, the heat it generated. And of course, you had to have it dark for the production people. So it must have been a miserable experience for people. Another miserable experience would be the microwave dish. Here is one of them. As I showed you in an earlier picture, they put it on the top of the van, and the receiving dish was on the tower of the television transmitter. And they, of course, had to be oriented within about a couple of degrees, or maybe even more closer than that, for the thing to work right. You can imagine in the middle of the winter, the guy that had to climb the tower in Newark and orient the thing. Another miserable experience. Okay, let's move inside. Oh, before I go in, here is one of the cameras, an RCA TK-30, I think, and they put the fancy wooden letters on the side of it. There were 3 cameras. When we got this thing, let me tell you a little bit of the history of how we got it. After they stopped using it, about 1970, WGSF donated it to the Ohio Historical Society. And it was like I imagine all state-run museums. They've got a big warehouse full of stuff that never sees the light of day. And somebody tipped me off that it was there. So I went down and talked to them and said, would you consider letting us use it because it'll be seen by people? And they went through their bureaucratic process that took quite a while, and then they finally agreed that they would give it to us on permanent loan. Recently, they've contacted us about giving it to us, but in any case, it's here for good. We had a flatbed truck pick it up and at the Historical Society in downtown Columbus and bring it over here. And people ask this frequently: how do we get it in here? Well, I don't know if you could see on the wall there, there are lines up near the ceiling of the top. That's a removable panel. So we took that out, maneuvered the van in, and then put the paneling back up. And here is the air conditioner that was added after it got here. And I'll show you some of the. Here's the power cable that they used. You can see the circuit breaker box, and somewhere in there, there's a plug that fits a dryer outlet.
Did they use oven outlets as well?
Oven outlets too. Anything I could get that would give them the power they needed.
How much power did it pull, Steve?
I don't know. Quite a bit, I would imagine. It's I would imagine it's. I think it's the 30 amp, 240 volt, 30 amp service. There's a variac up here on the wall for adjusting the voltage, because of voltage drop, I guess, from their source. Here's the driver's seat. So we'll start back here. Here is the control area, and this is all the original equipment. Now the clock I don't think is from the 40s, but everything else was original stuff that came from RCA. You had an audio guy and a camera guy, and then a director who sat in the middle, who made decisions about which camera to go to and so forth. Here's where they stored their cameras. Two of them in here. Parts up here. CCUs, power supplies, everything you can need. Now, I don't know how well you can see this, but this is a ladder that goes up onto the roof. So, and there's the door to get to that closes. And then this rack right here is the microwave system, and it's all there. I think it was going to say 2 gigahertz, but I'm not. It's been so long, I don't really remember.
Steve?
See if I can. Yeah.
One thing for the folks who may be newer to the group is about how much did each one of those cameras weigh for the tech guys to have to haul up to bleachers, etc., for sporting events or into the stands or for plays?
I don't know. They're really heavy, but they're nothing compared to the early color cameras. TK-41.
They weigh about 100 pounds each. The camera body weighs about, 65, and then the viewfinder 35.
Wow.
The 41
yeah.
is 300, I think. It's 4 people to carry a TK-41 up a set of stairs.
Yeah, right. And just the cable for the TK-41 is because it required 3 of those cables that the black and white cameras had, at least in the early configurations.
There's a famous photograph of NBC up on top of one of the buildings in Florida for the launch of one of the space missions. I can only imagine what it was like hauling that thing up that tall building.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We've had people come through the museum who's, early in their careers, that was their job, hauling those things around. and they told some pretty unpleasant stories about it. Well, that's the van. Anybody have any questions?
Surprisingly complete. I bet that thing would be able to be brought up online without a lot of trouble.
You know, we had dreams of doing that because there's no reason why the engine won't work in this thing. You know, could be brought back to life. And the same thing with all the electronic equipment. And we had a dream of having guys dress up in 1950s, the kind of attire that engineers and television people would have worn at that time, and just show up in downtown Columbus.
You sure that wasn't a nightmare instead of a dream?
Yeah. Right.
I don't know, lab coats and neckties.
We never got very far with it.
I think you ought to get it running. What kind of drivetrain was on these things? RCA had these made by somebody, custom coach company in New Jersey, as I recall. But I never found out what kind of engine it is, what kind of drivetrain, just because I'm a motorhead of some kind, I guess. But
I have the brochure for it, and it's got a 90 horsepower engine in it. And
yeah, I've got the brochure too, but it doesn't say what kind of engine. Is it a Chevy or I don't know.
You know, yeah, it's the body is from Boyertown Body Works.
That's it.
And the frame is a 1.5 ton Chevrolet truck.
Okay, I suspected that. Chuck Ferris has one of these taken apart all over his yard. And
right.
But he doesn't have the equipment that goes inside it.
Oh, he's got lots of equipment.
I know that, but I mean, his is all stripped down.
Right.
Oh, if his gets put back together, it's going to be a miracle. I mean, when I saw it, it was like, oh my God, we're talking about heroic restorations, but it'd be worth it. I mean,
yeah, this is Chuck. Mine's a disaster.
There you go.
Mine is an absolute rust bucket. But I've got all the equipment, but I don't think it's going to be restorable at all. And I did spend some time in Steve's about, 5-6 years ago or something. And I got the TM6 monitor working, and I couldn't get the camera out there working because the capacitors were pretty well shot. So, but Chuck is right. I've got all the stuff, but the time to do it, and my truck's in pretty bad shape.
Well, it would be a real big do-it-yourself kit. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that one.
When I visited you, that was
the one that's at the Cuban Museum is in pretty decent condition. They've
actually asked me to come down there and take a look at it, but the COVID has stopped it. So they've invited me to come down to Cuba and look at the truck, and I'm going to when this COVID mess is over.
Huh.
I don't know how many of these things RCA sold, but I think quite a few actually. But I guess most of them ended up in South America. I know I got sent to Venezuela in 1970 to do 3 rare earth concerts in a bull ring. I got held hostage, but that's a whole other story. But the national TV studios they broadcast this thing live on TV for 3 nights in a row out of one just like this. I'd love to see one work. I think it'd be great if ETF could get this one working.
I was in Caracas for about 6 months in 1979. And same thing, Radio Caracas, Channel 2 had 2 of them. And the public broadcaster on Channel 5 had at least 1. And all of these were on the road. But now that was a long time ago. But, be fun to find out they're still there. I got a lot of friends down there. It'd be fun to find out they still have them.
They're probably around somewhere, maybe in a landfill.
Yeah, in a landfill.
Well, and with comment about it'd be nice to get it going. Love to have a couple of volunteers to do it. So if anybody wants a real project,
to lead the parade on that one.
Right.
Well, that is the problem. But I mean, that one, the one here at ETF is everything's there, which is amazing. And so it either needs everything or nothing. And I'm for nothing other than maybe make it work. I think that would be really cool.
Right.
I'd be happy to come put a GoPro camera inside each camera.
That's never been done before. Trust me. I have a bridge for sale too.
Is there enough parts for the TK-60 there to be restored? And is it more likely to be restorable?
Jay Ballard's got a couple of them up in Rhode Island there, and I know at least 2 of them are working. So he may have parts for the rest of them.
Not sure what happened to our audio, but all of a sudden I couldn't hear anybody. I know there were a couple of interesting comments there.
I heard them, but the level was low. Well, that's the tour for this month. So let's open it up for general topic discussion. What do you have on your mind?
This is Chuck Azar. About the building thing, you said stuff out. Some time ago, you similarly had something that was about the same offer. And has it changed much? Is it closer? Is it worthy? What's your feeling on it?
Say that again, Chuck. I didn't follow what you were.
Okay. I was in receipt for your information about the progress of the township wanting your building and build another building.
Right.
So I know that this was going on a couple years ago, and you commented on it then, and it seems like the proposal is about the same. And so I'd like your comments on, is it changing? Do you like it? Or is it something we should do? Or do we just keep going?
Well, we don't know enough yet. I mean, theoretically, it's great because we move to a location that will get a lot more traffic. We get a brand new building, so we get to start from scratch in terms of setting up our displays and so forth. But we have no idea what kind of arrangement they want. We have no idea. For those of you that aren't familiar with this, the land where the museum is now is in demand for redevelopment. They want to make this area, which is sort of a rundown industrial area, but adjacent, only a block from the main area of downtown Hilliard. And they want to make it, they want to develop it. And so a real estate developer wants our property to build a multi-use, commercial and residential building. And also he was interested in buying the land, all the other businesses around here and doing something similar. The city is very much in favor of it because they want the development. And they also have a master plan for redeveloping the Franklin County Fairgrounds, which is about 6 blocks from here. They built a new public service building there recently, a few years ago. And they want to keep that project going. They want to build a event center, an outdoor amphitheater, a park. There is a indoor soccer and lacrosse company that wants to put a facility on the ground over there. So they have a master plan, or they're developing a master plan for revitalizing that area. And part of that would be a building for us. And, theoretically, it's great. Now, obviously, when you get down to all the details of it, it may not be. And I want to stress this is very preliminary. It's I had one meeting with the architect the other day, and I think it's going to move slowly. And I'll keep people up to date. But as of now, it's just very, very preliminary.
This is Chuck Azar again. In our earlier discussions, there was a question over that, who would own the building? And I think everybody agreed that we should own it. But even more importantly than that is, if all this other stuff they plan to build around it doesn't get built, then you're out in the middle of nowhere. So
no, it's not. It's not. It would not be in the middle of nowhere. It's right next to existing stuff. And it's about the same distance from downtown Hilliard as our present location.
I see.
So that's not an issue, but the issue of who owns it and how do we know that, we're going to be there permanently, that's that is obviously a very, very major issue.
Okay.
I have a question, Steve, and I've got also a comment. The new building that the foundation, that new building, is that owned by the foundation?
Who knows?
Huh?
We're so far from that.
No. The one that we had, I was there. I had the pleasure of being there for the first time with my wife. I think a year ago,
Right.
or maybe 2 years ago, and there was a brand new building that was around the corner from where the museum is.
No, you're thinking. I think of the Hilliard Arts Center.
Yeah. So
which
that's
is owned
not
by the
owned by.
city.
That's not okay. So
Yeah.
my comment though is, if these folks are land developers, my recollection of the current building is not really worth that much. Okay.
Right.
Except for the land and that. And my recommendation is, since the developers are in the business of land and land improvement, ask them for a building that they can donate to the foundation.
Right.
That is per spec, under a certain amount of money for the land and the building, and you can build with the architect, and that way you just trade it. You trade off what we've got currently for a donation. So let's say the land and everything is worth I don't know, but I'm just going to say, let's say everything is worth $100,000, and they say, okay, look, we'll give you a $500,000 building to replace what you've got with the land. You tell them, okay, you can donate it to us and take off 400,000 of that. They can deduct 400,000 as a donation.
Yeah.
It's a way to do the deal.
We'll see how this develops. As I said, this is just very, very preliminary.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Steve, keep in mind that if they want your property, you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
One thing that probably should be taken into consideration is how much fun it would be to move all this stuff.
That sounds like a job for a Texan.
It's a big deal, I can tell you that.
Ask him for a moving van too.
I think you should.
And that's another part of it. I think we'll probably want some money to cover that cost.
Yeah.
And they're talking about, the architect was talking about designing the building around the way we want to display things. So we wouldn't have to do much other than moving our stuff in, if that happens. But again, this is super early.
And there's another way that the architects can also make money if they put together a green building that's certified, LEED certified. There are tax incentives for building a building like that.
Right.
So there's a couple of ways to run this deal that it could be very advantageous and maintenance free, and cost to run it could be less. You have solar and whatever in your LEED building, Yep.
My wife is a LEED certified commercial architect, so she might have some input on that.
There you go.
I wonder what a building full of energy hog televisions does to your LEED certification.
Yeah, right. Take a hell of a solar system to power.
I was just going to say that, Steve.
Would it be possible to drive your remote truck in and out?
To drive it in and out. You mean to?
If you got it operating again, would it be possible to drive it in and out?
Yeah, it would.
Yeah. Make sure the door is big enough, because when we were given one of ESPN's original TV mobile units, when we went to move it inside the building, we found out it did not go through our doors and had to rebuild the door. That was a real
That's why you need a good architect.
Well, I was the architect, but I didn't have a tape measure I didn't realize this truck was quite as tall as it is. 13 feet 6 is a little high, and
Right.
12-foot doors, it just doesn't work. So now we got 14-foot doors.
Well,
It's a real special moment when that happened.
Well, don't feel bad because supposedly Henry Ford had to take a sledgehammer and knock some bricks out of the doorway of his shop to get his first car out.
Yeah, I'm sure that happened, and it happened to lots of people. In fact, I have a car that I got when I was in high school, and I still have it. The guy had taken the car apart and reassembled the body in the basement of his house, and it would not go out the bulkhead door outside. So we had to take it all apart again.
Well, that's how a bunch of students at my college managed to get a Volkswagen Beetle up on the roof of the dorm.
That must have been fun. That sounds like something right out of Animal House or something.
Yeah, pretty close, yeah.
Steve, has the architect been there to see the facility we have?
Yes. Yes, he has.
Chuck, since I was at the last Zoom meeting where you gave a generous tour of your facility, Chuck Conrad, and I wonder. I think you've gone through a lot of the architectural issues with your current building, it being an old auto dealership, and I'm sure you can lend a hand to, at least for advice, even if it's just a list of things that should be in the new building, which I can think of one, which would be power, sufficient power, sufficient clearance for displays and entry in and out, and I guess having a social area that would accommodate so many people, so that we can do presentations monthly or whatever, like you do, where it's an extra income stream.
I'd be more than happy to do that. That's a lot of this has been learning by doing, if you know what I mean. And sometimes you go, well, that wasn't such a great idea. It happens, When we started this museum, nobody had any idea what we were doing. I mean, if you think we were, had a master plan or anything, you'd be seriously wrong. So, but it's worked out. It's worked out good. So, and the ETF, same thing. I'm sure it just happened. Steve, collected a whole bunch of really cool stuff that nobody's ever seen before. So you start putting it in a building, and then you figure out how to deal with it.
Right.
Steve, do you have a committee on this, or is it just you handling everything?
I don't, because it's too early.
Well, if you do, I'd be glad to. I'm in Maryland, but I'd be glad to lend a hand on the Zoom calls and whatever.
Well, I'll keep that in mind when we get yeah, right. James, you're right. When it gets serious, that's this is just conceptual, and if the city comes back and says yes, we want to figure out how to do that, that'll be the time to start getting serious. And I don't know when that's going to be. It's really hard to tell.
Okay.
Being a sitting city council member in my town, it's going to take you at least a year before you get down that.
I think so too.
That's fine, but make sure you tell the city that you'd be willing to put a deal together as well, because I mean I can see a very good advantage for us to get a modern building with all the amenities and for a trade, basically. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it would be very worthwhile to pursue, and something that the museum deserves.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Hello, Chuck again. Am I still on? Yeah. I'm sure that the city, the township, the people who are the developers, the area, the neighborhood. This started a long time ago. They obviously still aren't that much further along. Who knows where it is as far as the developer is concerned? Is he going to be willing to spend the money? So all these things come way before we have to worry about this and giving a lot of formal concern. I only brought it up because I had seen it on an email or something, maybe on Facebook or something. And so I brought it up to see how other people who probably weren't familiar with the earlier time.
What let's anybody else have a topic they want to talk about?
Yes, I have one. This kind of dovetails in with future considerations for the museum. I know there's been some talk about expanding the chronological range of the collection on display, so to speak. And as a part of my moving to the best coast, even though I won't be at the coast itself, I have a 1975 vintage RCA made in Indianapolis, black and white set, still runs, never been touched by me, so it's unmolested, that I would like to give to the museum for display. I also have a Montgomery Ward, if you remember that chain, a Montgomery Ward 12-inch, another black and white set, also still works. Both of these sets are complete, and if there's interest by the museum, I would, the ETF museum, I'd like to bring them in and donate them.
Well, John, the problem is space. We are crammed right now. So if there's any way you could hold on to them, so when we get to that point, they're available, then that would be good. But we just don't have room to take more stuff.
Yeah, I'm planning on moving no later than November. My daughter from my former marriage is getting married on November 7th. And after that, I plan to, shall we say, look at Virginia in my rearview mirror.
Okay.
I think there's a song called Happiness is Lubbock in the rearview mirror.
John, where are you moving to?
Very rural Nevada. Put it to you this way. Broadcast TV is from translators on 20-foot telephone poles on 4,000-foot mountain peaks, and they have transmitter powers that are exceeded by the mobile rig in my Toyota.
Okay, so Nevada's a nice state, I'm told. And I'm sure you'll work out something to do with receiving pictures. Smart guy that you are.
No state tax.
Well, Steve, I was going to mention that just while we've got everybody on the call here, if the museum has a whole long list of future meeting topics that we're going to work our way down, but we may not have thought of everything. If anybody has any ideas or suggestions for things that'd be fun to do on these meetings, let us know.
Hey, one question is, and I know Dave and I talked offline, is there going to be a conference sometime in our future?
Yeah.
Now that restrictions are starting to lighten up.
Yeah, I mean, the two possibilities are this fall and next spring. And I think probably next spring is where we're going to end up at about the same time that we did it in the past. But no decision has been made yet. But we're clearly going to go back to having an annual convention.
I think you used to time it to be after the NAB convention, long enough so that people could come from there up to Ohio.
Yes.
And what I think I see on the horizon, since NAB has skipped the spring convention this year and moved it to the fall, I don't think there will be another spring convention next year.
Okay.
Actually, there will be. They're going to do NAB in October this year, and then they'll go back to April in 2022.
Yeah, that's what they've said. And I've heard rumors that they may not actually do the fall one. So we'll see. Who knows? I know every time I go to NAB, I end up getting sicker than a dog because you meet everybody from everywhere that's got every kind of possible disease there is. And that's before COVID. So my enthusiasm for going to the fall one is not real high right at the moment. And I've had my shots, just like my
Me
dog.
too.
Dave,
Fully
I was
vaccinated.
Dave, I was on the phone with NAB Science Technology today. And as of this afternoon, they're still on for the fall.
Yeah, they have to be on because if they don't have the convention, NAB is going to go out of business. So it'll be a much smaller
brand
event.
new building.
They have it. You're right. They'd have to sell their brand new building, which would be sad. No, they'll be there in Vegas in October. CES is going to happen in January. NAB will be back in Vegas in April. So that's coming back. Hey, Dave Arlen, just to FYI, you got a nice looking microphone there and a little mic flag, and you're all set up. And you're pinning my meter here. Meaning what? It's too hot? It's coming through at like +8. Yeah.
You're blasting compared to everybody else.
Well, I can turn it down. Sorry about that. No, I thought you might appreciate knowing that. I got hit last week for being too soft. So how's that? Is that a little bit better? That's a lot better. Yeah. Okay, good.
Is there an update on the RCA TK project?
Yeah, there is. Barry Bennett is finally back to working on it. And the first thing he discovered is that the optics of the camera that we have, the better of the two camera heads we have, the optics are shot. It turns out that our second camera, the optics are better, but still not great. So we've made we talked about they can be, apparently there's a company in Canada that can do can refurbish them. But we made the decision to go ahead and get the camera going to see what it looks like before we take that step, because it's several $1,000s, I think, to have them refurbished. So.
Well, aren't there a few static displays in other museums that we could contact them about donating or trading if they're not going to go for a restoration?
That's a good idea. I would think that might be a possibility.
Yeah, I think that we talked about the MBC in Chicago. They have that WGN TK-41. Which I visited many years ago, but I noted at the time they have no control unit for it. The cables were just chopped off. So it seems like that would be a great parts trader.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, Steve.
Steve, just a question. What can go wrong with optics? It seems to me it's just glass and metal.
Well, it's the
Steve, this is Chuck Ferris. You guys hear me?
I'm
having trouble with my video.
Show you. Hang on, I'll show you what can go wrong.
Yeah, guys, I might be able to help you with the optics. I've got two parts TK-41s here. I'm sorry my video went away, but if you can hear me, Steve, I'm going to dig into my 41s, and it depends if you've got an A, B, or a C. I might be able to help you with the optics.
Well, as it turns out, we've got one prism optics and one dichroic optics. And if we want to swap the good into the bad one into the good head, we'd have to swap the whole optical assembly. So I think, like Steve said, the plan right now is to get the electronics up, because the one block I have here will make a picture. It'll just have some flaws in it. and then we'll go from there. But yeah, if somebody's got a good set of optics laying around, sure.
They use both
I
types
do.
in the camera, Barry?
The camera originally came out with dichroics, and they upgraded later to prisms, which could be retrofit or ordered that way. And the museum has one of each. I'll directly answer somebody who asked what can go wrong with the optics. There are pieces that are cemented together, and what happens is those cement joints deteriorate. Stuff gets in there. I don't know. You'd have to talk to an optical expert, but you can see defects in between pieces of glass.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
Dichroics, of course, their front surface for the most part, and the front surfaces can deteriorate depending on how they've been stored.
It's sort of like a CRT cataract of sorts.
Yeah,
well, I don't know if you remember where these cameras came from. They were literally in a barn that had collapsed, covered in mud. So it's amazing that anything is there.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw here's the prism block. I don't know if this is going to come through very well.
There you go.
You see the ring
Raise
around?
it up.
That's
Higher.
actually
Yeah, there you go.
That defect you see, that circular ring around the outside, is between the front piece of glass and the actual prism block itself. It's cemented on, and that stuff is in between the two elements, so it needs an optical house to fix it.
I've got a question. You say you've got a set of dichroic optics?
Yeah, in fact, that was the dichroics I was holding up. This is the prism.
Okay, here's the main reason I asked is I'm restoring my 1952-53 TK-40 prototype just to cosmetic condition. And I have got two TK-41s sitting in my shop that are parts. And my optics, the last time I looked, are in not bad shape at all. And I would be more than willing to trade to get that set of dichroics. No problem.
Well, it's up to Steve and you. That's above my pay grade.
Sounds to me like a good thing for both of us.
Well, let me work on that. When I pull them out, I'll contact you. I know we got a little time, but I would love to have a set of dichroic because I don't know of any place in the world that's got one, and I would love them.
Okay.
Steve, I've got a question.
Yes.
Yeah, Daniel here from Onset, Massachusetts. I'm curious about how you restore the sets in the museum there. What sort of attention to detail level do you get to with, do you restuff the capacitors, or are you bringing things back to completely original, or are you kind of just putting the new equipment inside of them to get them working again?
It depends upon the set. All the pre-war sets that we've done, we've tried our best to make them visually look like they were originally. Like we've taken the RCA pre-war sets, have the capacitors have a paper or cardboard shell, and we have, which you can open up, and what we have done is open them up and stuffed a modern capacitor and sealed them back up so they look like they originally did. The same thing with the electrolytics. And even we've had replaced power transformers, so we've and the new ones don't look quite the same, and we've made them look as close using various techniques to the original as possible. Now with post-war sets, we just replace the parts, and so they don't look like the originals.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I find myself too. I get in that attention span where I start a project and I'm gonna go, all out and restuff everything, and then I get halfway into it and I realize, I just tack these parts in here. It works just the same, and you kind of get down that rabbit hole. You get lost sometimes.
It's very tedious to do to restuff everything.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Steve, in many cases, we'd prefer to have new parts in there because the goal ultimately is to have as many TVs watchable
Right.
by the visitors. So, like, for example, with the Predicta, I worked on that set a couple years ago, and it's got modern silicon diodes, newer resistors, things like that in it. So, Predicta was notorious for not being a very reliable set when it was new. So I think essentially the philosophy is keep the same circuit design, but update it with newer parts. But you're not re-engineering the set, I guess.
Next.
Speaking of the,
hey guys, here
I
just went out and got them. Here's the set of optics right here, and they look really, really nice. So I went out in my shop and got them. So put me on the list.
All right.
Right here. This is yours. I want the dichroics. I don't care what kind of condition they're in. All right. Look right in there. See? Nice and clean. They're going in your camera.
All right.
All right.
Fantastic.
Steve, I had a question for you. Speaking about the Predicta, I did that presentation a few years ago, and you've got a copy of it up on the ETF website. I wanted to put together a revised version with more content in it. Can I just send that to you when it's ready and you can upload it?
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What's your question?
Just as a little aside here for the upcoming swap meet, which I've already got a hotel room for, and I've been looking to rent a minivan to fill up with some stuff because I don't want to use the front and back seat of my car, just not a good idea. Trying to find a rental minivan right now is either near impossible or prohibitively expensive. I'm not sure what I'm going to end up doing.
You know why that is, Mark? Do you know why?
When the pandemic hit, the car rental companies sold off their fleets.
They sold off their fleet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why they don't have anything.
Yeah.
They don't have anything.
All rentals are expensive as the Dickens now.
I have one of them as a client. It's just harder than hell to get them to pay their bills.
just go buy one.
Well, actually, that's not so crazy because I've bought trucks so that I could use it and then sold it later, and it was way cheaper than renting something from Ryder or U-Haul or something.
Yep.
You might think about that.
Yeah, maybe it's time to look on Craigslist or something, or nextdoor.com in my neighborhood, or borrow one from somebody.
Or a short-term lease.
Plenty.
Yeah.
I'm going to run. I'll see you guys next time at movie night with the wife. So I'll be in touch about the optics.
Fantastic.
See you guys later.
Good to see you.
Good luck to you in Turtletown.
We have turtles too.
Yeah, I bet. I'll be in touch. I need to talk with you in the future here, Chuck. All right.
Okay, no problem. And Steve and Dave, I know you guys have asked me to do a tour of my facility here and my collection. I'm going to do that. I've just had some back problems and I've got surgery again on Tuesday. So another couple of months and we'll do a tour here of my facility and my goodies and stuff.
Great.
Okay.
Well, hope the
Good night.
surgery goes well.
Thank you very much. I know you know about that.
Yes.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Do we have room for a slightly off-topic note from my other collecting vice, my Cadillacs?
Cadillacs.
I have a 1960 Cadillac I had registered with a movie car company, and they called me last week. It's going on a trailer up to New York next Tuesday to be used out in front of the Plaza Hotel for that marvelous Mrs. Maisel series on Amazon as a background
cool.
car. Yeah,
that's a really well-made show.
The movie company won't let anybody on the set. I can't go with it because of the COVID things, but I think I'm going to take the train up and just see what I can see from the edges.
I have a Cadillac story that I'd like to share. I had my third car in college was a 1969 DeVille convertible, and I bought it for $1,350. And my mother, God rest her soul, she said, "Why, Mom, do you want to buy an old car?" And this was back in the 80s. And I said, "Well, I want the convertible." So I bought the car and painted it yellow. And we had a great time with it all for years. And then it sat in my garage, and I sold it for $600 in the 90s.
Oh, geez.
Yep, I sold it for $600, and a guy came with a rollback, and he paid me in 20s. And $600 looks like a whole lot more money when it's counted out in 20s. But he said that he was going to restore it, but I think he parted it out. So it's Gonzo Galonzo. And of course, I always would like a nice convertible again, but yeah, we'll have to wait. That's my story.
Dave, one piece of advice I can give you about cars and movie sets is don't spend a whole bunch of time detailing it to make it look absolutely showroom new. I used to be very active in old cars, only slightly active now, and I got suckered into taking a car to Waxahachie, Texas. I had to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't get to come home till about 10 o'clock at night. Everybody in the club got $100 rather for the club for bringing their car. First thing they did, and I'd slaved over this damn thing over the weekend, and the first thing they did is they sprayed mud all over it so it would look authentic. Right. And then whoever drove it had no idea how to drive a manual transmission, so
burned up the clutch.
Came close. I did that in a parade later, actually. But
I'll tell you, having a yellow Cadillac convertible when you're in college would definitely make you a BMOC.
I had people, I went to school at University of Maryland, and I had, I can't tell you how many people I had coming up asking me to sell that car and all the things. And I used to drive it around, and I parked, the thing was 29 feet long, and I used to parallel park it in Georgetown when we went down there, because drinking was it was 1 year. I think it was still 18 or something like that.
It was 18 in D.C. for a very long time.
Huh?
Yeah, drinking age was 18 in D.C.
18,
for many
yeah.
years.
It was 21 in Maryland, and it was 18, so we could go down to D.C. as college kids and go and drink legally down there, and it was fantastic. Of course, I didn't drink.
Were you the designated driver?
Well, I was. There was no such thing as a designated driver back then.
Hey, Dave, it's not limited to Cadillacs. Anybody that's got anything weird, old televisions or cameras or things like that. I was on a Zoom meeting with the New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission the other day, and apparently there has never been as much movie and television production going on, at least in the New York, New Jersey area, as there is right now. And they're looking for stuff like that. So there are opportunities. With our neighbors in the Info Age Museum down there, the vintage computer people have made a hell of a lot of money and gotten an awful lot of exposure, renting out their old computers for these TV shows. And, there's a lot of opportunity there. Cars, TVs, whatever. Keep it in mind.
Maybe it's something the museum can consider doing as part of the website, kind of a resource for companies to take a look at, and members of the museum that are willing to rent something out.
Well, I think some of our stuff was in, what was the scanning disc TV in, Steve?
That was in Boardwalk Empire.
Boardwalk Empire, another extremely well-made show.
Yeah.
But one of our members was in the AV equipment rental business, and the problem is that the shipping cases usually are worth more than the stuff you're shipping, because it is just a difficult thing to do to get custom shipping cases for all this fragile stuff. So it's an investment that we're probably not going to want to make. You can take a Predicta and put it in the back seat of your car and drive it to a movie set, but shipping one, not going to happen.
The other question I had, if it was rented, who handles the damage? I mean, some of the stuff in the museum is irreplaceable. It's unbelievable. And what happens there? Do you insure?
Well, no, I'm not advocating the museum renting their priceless stuff, but members of the museum or fans of the museum that might want to consider it on an ad hoc, case by case, individual, not the museum.
Well,
hello. Can someone hear me? This is Mark. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Yep.
Oh, yep. Yeah. This is the first time I'm ever speaking. I have a little expertise in this area. I live in Manhattan. I work in the film industry, and I would just suggest being very, very careful, especially with one-of-a-kind stuff. Movie companies are bonded, and their main mission is to get the shot. And if it happens to damage something, usually their attitudes are, well, we'll bond it and we'll just pay you off with your insurance company. So where you think you might make a quick buck, just be very, very cognizant of that. Some companies are better than others. I could tell you stories when I worked on Law and Order that they did not care. They do everything on location, a lot of things on location. And they would just trash places and then have the insurance companies repay everything. And then they finally could not get bonded anymore. And they just fired everyone and got a whole new crew in at some point. So just be extremely cautious about that, particularly with those equipment. Cars is different. It's right there, but vintage products and things like that. You have the actors who most of the time are idiots. Just to get the scene, they'll do what they got to do with it. So word of warning.
Mark, maybe Bruce Major, who does a lot of radio and TV rental in Manhattan, and he says that he basically rents the stuff out for one shot for more than what it's worth to sell it. So he comes out ahead if it doesn't get destroyed, and he comes out ahead if it does. So that's one way to approach it, I guess. But
and you want to kind of be there on the set with it, make some kind of thing in the contract that you need someone to observe, or that if you're going to do that as well.
What was that story about the guitar in the movie a couple of years ago? I forget the details. Somebody smashed the guitar.
You're thinking of United Airlines, Dave.
Yeah.
And the song "United Hates Guitars."
Now, somebody had a priceless.
It was
guitar.
a priceless Martin guitar.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So stuff happens, but you gotta go in knowing that. I go in with a Predicta, and maybe I could live with it if it got a piano dropped on it, but maybe not so much for a TRK5.
Well, we have a rental deal coming up next week. they called me and said, "Hey, we'd like to rent some stuff for a commercial shoot." And so I said, "Well, what sets are you interested in?" And they went through all the pictures of the stuff on the website, and they said, "Oh, that's too old for us." So I said, take a look at our page that has the stuff that's in our auction. And they came back, and there are 8 sets, plastic, Japanese, sets that are probably going to go for less than $10 in the auction. They wanted 8 of them. And I said, go for it. We're happy for you guys to take them.
That stuff is starting to become not necessarily valuable, but interesting.
Yeah.
You see that. Dan can probably speak to that. We see that on the discussion groups all the time. There's a shocking amount of interest.
Yeah, and it seems like the video gaming community is the big draw for like 1980s or 1990s televisions.
Well, that's one thing. And then you just got younger people. There are an awful lot of younger people in the hobby. We don't see them here, but any television with a big TV, with a big CRT in the face is a funky, old, weird thing now.
Hey, Steve, this is Joanna. I'm talking for Roy Stellick. We're just asking if the CRT, what's going on with the building?
What's happening with your CRT rebuilding effort?
Oh, well, we decided a long time ago that it wasn't practical for us to do it at the museum. We have all the equipment, but nobody stepped forward to manage the project after several years of looking.
Yeah.
So we've given up. We're going to keep it as a demonstration facility. There's a guy in Maryland who is in the process of setting up a facility.
You're talking about Nick?
Nick. And eventually we'll be rebuilding tubes there.
Okay. Another area that I have problem getting parts is things like flyback transformers and items like that. Does anybody have any words of wisdom on how to acquire those things?
Well, we have quite a stock here. Look on our website. You'll see we've got hundreds of them. And then Moyer Electronics is another source for flybacks.
Yeah, I've used Moyer. He's looking for one for me right now.
Yeah,
kind of a rare thing.
There are companies who rebuild flyback, power transformers.
Do you have information on those rebuilding companies that you could put on the website so we could?
If you'll send me a message or email or somehow, I'll be very happy to look up the names and send them off to you. I had a power transformer built just a few months ago and a flyback over a year ago.
Oh, really? Hold on, let me get paper.
What
I have, Chuck, that's news to me. I didn't know anybody was doing flyback transformers.
Well, it's a little over a year ago that I had a flyback built. Was for a Zenith.
Wow.
Maybe it's 2 years ago. Time flies when you're having a good time.
Right.
You might want to try the Antique Radio Forum website because there were some threads about just that very thing. Some people that are doing it. I don't recall.
Is this Mark Wilson that was talking about the rebuild? Mark Nelson? Is this you, Mark? Who was the individual who was talking about rebuilding companies?
I was. This is Chuck Azar.
Chuck?
Yes.
Chuck Azar.
What's the phone number we can reach you at?
267-261.
Say again?
267-261-5263.
Thank you for sharing that. Roy Don't Stellick call will be- tonight, tomorrow. Okay, great. Okay.
Steve, there was another question that came in on the chat. Somebody was asking about rebuilding black and white sets, including replacing the phosphor.
Okay. Well, phosphor replacement is most of the rebuilding that we've been talking about so far has been just replacing the electron gun using the existing phosphor, because most of the time the phosphor is fine. You can replace the phosphor, and we have when Rax company in France went out of business, we got their equipment, including their equipment for rephosphoring and aluminizing tubes. So it's possible to do, but I don't think Nick is thinking about that, at least not in the near future.
But if that rephosphoring equipment works, could it be a collaboration between Nick and us to just phosphor a bulb and then ship it to him?
I don't think so. You're dealing with hazardous chemicals, and I can't see us getting into that. And what I would do is if Nick gets serious about wanting to do that, we might make an arrangement for him to use our equipment or something.
Which, if we're dealing with chemicals and such, could become an issue with the city of Hilliard in a new facility.
Absolutely.
I wasn't aware there was anything hazardous involved in the phosphoring operation.
Phosphor.
It's
well, I don't know that for a
willemite.
fact.
How much phosphor is involved in phosphoring a thing? An ounce? You know, and the other thing is there's phosphorus in fertilizer all over the place.
There is no phosphorus in a television screen. It is a mineral that glows when it's hit with an electron. It's usually willemite is the P4 phosphor. It's not hazardous. I don't think there's anything hazardous involved in that operation, Steve. I could be wrong.
I thought it was in the washout chemicals and the chemicals for pre-treating the
could
surface
be yes
before it was applied.
There may be nothing wrong, but they'll find something wrong.
Yep, that too.
In addition to the Leeds green rating, we should also get a hazardous waste dump rating.
To that point, I asked my wife about that. You know, could you do a lead facility for something that's got a bunch of power sucking devices in it? And she said, oh yeah, we've gotten battery plants and automotive plants to get lead certifications. So as long as the architect sets their baseline right, you're good.
There might be all kinds of museum exemptions too. You know.
Dan, you're absolutely right, because I'm familiar with light rail vehicles, and they suck a lot more power than any museum would suck. Just maybe one vehicle even, and they're LEED certified, their facilities.
Yep. But to the point about getting parts like flybacks and that, there are those usual suspect sources, but keep your eyes open, because that stuff pops up in the strangest places. And I was looking all over for a flyback for a Predicta Siesta. All the ones that I had were bad. I didn't think I'd get 3 in a row that all had the same winding shot in them. Maybe Philco had a bad run of them or whatever, but I'm looking and looking and looking, trying to get this customer set going. And I happened to be at an antique outboard motor swap meet, and I was talking to this guy, and he says, hey, I want to introduce you to my buddy over here. He used to really be into televisions, and I talked to him, and it turns out he had one he was willing to sell me new in the box. So you never know.
John Folsom was experimenting with rewinding flyback transformers a few years ago, and I was under the impression that it didn't work, that his yield was very low. And I was wrong, apparently, because I was talking to John about it a couple of weeks ago, and he said, no, he thinks it's it's tedious, but potentially viable. He just didn't feel like doing it anymore. So he has a flyback winding machine that he's not using. And somebody was interested in talking to him. I don't know if they pursued it or not, but it is, I guess, technically feasible to rewind them.
Well, yeah, it's like I said, somebody on the ARF forum is doing it, but it's onesies, one at a time, and it is tedious. Just, it's like winding any other coil or transformer. Just
right. They charge you $1 an hour, and each transformer is $1 million. It's
about what I'd want.
I think so, yeah. And she doesn't know better. But she said that I did her in the.
Well, I think I'm going to bid everyone a good night. My wife is making rattling noises about why we haven't eaten dinner yet. So I think, and I have a dog that's saying, you haven't fed me yet. So everybody have a good evening, and I will see you next time.
Yeah, I got to keep muting my microphone. My stomach is rumbling here.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
Have a TV dinner, Chuck.
Yeah, a TV dinner. No, actually, we have Mexican food tonight. I got to go earlier. Yeah, microwaves well, so we'll be good. So
well, I'm going to have to bug out too. I've had a long day.
Yeah, we have too. We actually had a group come into the museum this morning who showed up about 40 minutes early, which was really special because we weren't open at 9:20 in the morning, but that's when they showed up, and they were all deaf. 31 deaf people. Kind of interesting giving a tour with that. Actually, it worked out well, but it was rather interesting. First time I'd ever done that.
This is Chuck Azar here. Glad to see everybody. Steve, you're looking good. And
Thank you.
I'll be
You
signing
too.
off too.
All right. Talk to you all later.
Switch myself. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
I'll leave it up. If people want to stay and chat, you can stay and chat. But I guess we'll end the official formal part of the meeting here. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Night, everybody.
Night.